Hey everyone, it's Irene from Bay Wellness Coaching. Today I'm really excited to be interviewing Adrian. Adrian was described on a LinkedIn post as the most interesting web developer in the world. And I would agree, he's a very, very interesting person. He's lived in so many different countries. And I think it's really rare to meet someone who's lived and actually lived long term, like over half a year or a year, 2 years, 3 years in different countries. So yeah, if you could start off, Adrian, do you think you could share a little bit about which countries you've lived in so far and about how long you were living in each one?
Cool. Yeah. Hello. I'm Adrian, and I'm originally from Mexico. I lived there for 20 something years, and then I moved to the US after that, and I lived there for 2 years. After that, I moved to Germany, and I lived there for a year and a half. Then I moved to Singapore. I was there for 1 year. Then I went back to the US for 2 years, and currently I'm in Australia since January. I think that's 7 months or 8 months, something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't hear of many people living in so many different countries, like really traveling the world. What got you interested in trying to live in a different country, like growing up from Mexico? Like, how did you decide, like, oh, I want to move to the US?
Cool. So I think the US was different than all the other ones. When I was young, I'm a software engineer, so I wanted to work in a big company, and I think getting a job in the US was a good step in that direction. So I gradually was working in Mexico, and eventually I got an opportunity that put me in contact with people from the US. And then eventually I said, "Oh, I'm gonna apply." And this was mostly because of work reasons, because I wanted to progress in my career. And then I got a job in the US in California, and that was awesome. At some point, I thought, "Oh, my life is made." Like, I basically achieved my goal of getting a job in a big company in the US. I was very happy, but I didn't know anything about the world, and I heard a lot of people talking about their stories about their travels around the world, and I was like, "Oh, I never seen anything other than the US and Mexico." And also, I'm not super a person that will make a lot of plans to actually travel somewhere and visit a bunch of places, because I'm not that good of a tourist. So I said, okay, I know how I'm gonna do it if I want to see the world. I'm gonna get a job in another country, and then I get to see around there and actually meet the people and immerse myself in the culture. So I started looking for jobs in Europe, and I got a job in Berlin, in Germany, and then moved there, and I was there for a while. And what happened there is that the job was not very interesting for me. So I said, okay, I'm going to try something different. I did it once, so I'm going to see if I can do it again, this time in Asia. So I started looking in different countries in Asia, and Singapore hired me. And I said, cool, let's try it again. And then Singapore was a lot of fun, but then I got contacted by a very interesting company in the Bay Area. So I said, okay, so I guess I'm going back to California, and went back to California. And after some time in California, about 2 years, I said, okay, I've been here for a while. I learned a lot from this company, but it's time to um, keep exploring the world. So I decided to look for opportunities in Australia, and now I'm here.
Dang, yeah, that's really exciting. You've lived in so many different countries. Was there one country that really stood out to you? I've heard a lot of things about Berlin being a really great international hub, like people from all over the world, like tons of expats. I've heard a lot about similar things about Singapore. I've never been to Berlin myself, but I'd been to Singapore and I love the food there. I feel like it's probably one of the best places for food in the world. Like, does any place stand out for you in terms of like, oh, I really enjoyed living in this city?
They all stand out, and I think I notice it more when I leave the place. Like, when I'm there, like, I'm like, oh, I kind of miss this from the previous place. But Berlin has great people, very international. Most of my friends spoke Spanish. We spoke in Spanish a lot, which I didn't expect. They have the craziest parties you can imagine. And they are so chill, like they are always in the park, like drinking beer and playing frisbee or whatever, and made some really great friends there from all around the world. So that was amazing. Singapore is great because, as you said, it has great food that is cheap, so and you can find anywhere, which I love. And also made a lot of friends. And it's like it's a tiny city that has, well, it's a tiny country, normal size city that has everything you need, and it's very easy to move around the city and do anything you want. So I love the convenience of the city, and it's also so close from other Southeast Asian countries that you can visit very easily, and they are also very interesting. The Bay Area is great if you're a nerd, which I am and I enjoy, but commute makes it very inconvenient. So that part I don't like. And Australia so far has been pretty great, but there's a virus out there that doesn't let me enjoy it as much as I wanted. But I'm sure if there wasn't a virus, I would be having so much more fun than now.
Yeah, like I think it's really, that sounds like a really broad experience. Like a lot of those cities are like really big cities, but also they have their own differences in terms of like country to country. When I guess you were deciding and choosing the companies you were going to work for in these areas, like how difficult was the visa process? Was it pretty easy because the companies managed it all for you, or how was your process like actually getting into the country? Were there delays? Like how did that all work out?
So all the companies that hire me, they help me with the visa process. The time I moved from the Mexico to the US, it was very easy because you have to fill a lot of forms for entering the US and getting a visa. But because I had always been in Mexico, it was pretty easy. And because Mexicans and like there's the North America Free Trade Agreement that makes it easy to get a visa between these three countries, Canada, Mexico, and the US. So the process was really easy. When I moved to Germany, the company also helped me, but it was a smaller company with less experience in getting people from overseas. So I had to do more work myself. Like I had to go to Mexico and get my documents translated to German and then send them there. That was still pretty doable. Singapore, the process was probably the smoothest. Like all their government processes like are so easy there. The company helped me. They had experience with that. Um, I think they don't have as many requirements as the US or Germany. So I remember that it was very easy. And another thing, when I get there and they actually have an office where they greet you like, oh, what do you need to do today? And they put you somewhere, and then you wait for 5-10 minutes, and then they treat you like a human being, and then like you do your process. Like it's really different than doing some government process in the US where they don't really treat you like that nicely. Then when I went back to California, the from Singapore to California, the problem is that you have to have information about all the countries where you have traveled and all the places where you have lived. And at that point, I had lived in a few places and I had traveled to a few places. So gathering all that information is a lot of work. Other than that, because of the North American Free Trade Agreement visa, it was pretty easy. And then finally, for moving to Australia, it was a hell of a process because I had to get a bunch of documents for all the places where I had lived, including police clearance for each of the countries, which was very complicated because I had to have a person in each country doing things for me, and I had to get documents, like get fingerprints, send them to all of them. They did some stuff themselves, and then they send them back to me, and a bunch of back and forth between the different countries. Once I had all the documents, it was just waiting a little. And they are also very nice here. When you arrive, everything is very smooth.
Yeah, wow, that sounds like a really long process. Do you have like a spreadsheet of like from this date to this date I lived at this address in this country, and like now you just
I
end up
now do.
populating it?
I do now. Yeah, I learned my lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, even in the US, I think sometimes when you're maybe like applying for global entry or something like that, they ask like, have you been to this country, this country? It's like, I have traveled to a lot of countries. So then I'm like, oh man, when did I go to that country? I don't remember. And like trying to look through my calendar and like, when was I like traveling to this country? Especially if you're like going on a small like road trip or something and you hit like a few countries that are like close by. Like, I don't remember. I don't remember which date I was there. It was at some point in this year, especially if you've traveled like 10, 12, 13, 15 years ago. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not sure. I don't really remember. So,
Yeah, I do my best to put accurate information, but I'm sure some of it is not very accurate.
yeah. Well, that's nice that you still have contacts and friends from the different countries. Do you find it easy to keep in touch with some of the people that you've met along the way? Like, what's your way of keeping in touch with people?
I find it easy, yes. Like sometimes I forget about some of them, and sometimes I get messages from different people from different places, and I'm very happy to hear from them, and I try to talk to them. Some of them I think about them, and like something about them comes to my mind, and then I send them a message, "How are you doing?" and we catch up. Um, it is mostly like that. I have some very close friends in all the places where I was that I keep in touch more often than others. I don't have really a system that I follow. Mostly, like the only reminder that I get is in their birthdays. Whenever it's their birthday, like I'll definitely like ping them and see how they are doing. Otherwise, it's whenever I remember them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, even for people who don't even really move around a lot, to always remember all of your friends, whether you met them in school or different companies you worked at, different like organizations you've been a part of. So that's good that you, it seems like you try your best to keep in touch. Um, and I guess on topic of keeping in touch with people, was your family surprised or shocked that you've been traveling for so long? Were they surprised you wanted to move to the US before? Like, do you think about, did they have any concerns, I guess, when you decided you're gonna kind of become this like international traveler?
So I think they were more concerned when I moved from Cancun, which is my hometown, to Mexico City, because that was me leaving the nest. And she was like, "Oh, what's gonna happen? You're gonna be by yourself. You don't know how Mexico City works and stuff." And she was a little worried, and she was like, "Oh, if it doesn't work out, like come back and you're welcome and everything." But then that passed. I got a job, and then she was more relaxed. When I got my job in the U.S., she was very, I guess, excited because she knew that that was something that I really wanted. So, and my dad too. Like I'm closer to my mom, but my dad reacted the same way. And yeah, they were really excited and supportive. Then when I decided to move to Germany, that was very surprising because I didn't really tell them like I'm planning on moving to Germany. When I got the job, I told them I'm going to Germany. So they were like, "Oh, where did this come from?" and stuff. I just want to see the world. And yeah, they were surprised. But after that, now they kind of expect me to move every now and then. So every few months, they ask me, "Oh, are you planning on moving already? Where are you going next?" Yeah. So that's how it works now.
It sounds like they're pretty supportive of you and kind of your travels. Is it hard to go back home to visit since like some of these you have a really big time distance and like actual physical flying distance?
Yeah, it is hard. Like right now, it's impossible to go see them because of coronavirus. But yeah, I think when I was in Singapore, I went once, which I think is pretty okay. When I was in Germany, probably went once or twice, which is pretty okay. So it's been a little challenging sometimes, but I think we've been keeping it, keep seeing each other like at least once a year.
Mm. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear that your parents were very shocked about your initial move to Mexico City, and now they've totally become comfortable with you moving around to a different country, to another country. Um, Maybe when you first decided to go to Mexico City, and like what kind of sparked you to like want to move out of the city that you grew up in?
It was that I wanted to grow as a software engineer, and there's not many jobs here. Everything in Cancun is about tourism, and there's no way to work to grow as a software engineer. So I wanted to have more opportunities, and yeah, that was pretty much it. Like I said, I wanna grow as a software engineer. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try it. And the thing is that I knew nothing about Mexico City or how to work in these big companies. I didn't know if I was going to get a job. Like I didn't have a job when I moved to Mexico City, so there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, well, I mean, you picked a good industry to go into if you're looking for something that is going to have a lot of jobs in the future too. And it seems like it's been able to take you to so many different countries. Is there one country that really stands out in your mind as like your favorite place that you've lived in so far?
Maybe Singapore. I It was very convenient, and like it was, everything was very convenient. The city was easy to move. The food was great. I lived in a nice apartment that I really liked. I had really good friends. I danced salsa, so I had an awesome salsa group. And yeah, I think everything was really enjoyable.
Yeah, I really like Singapore. I've visited twice. I think it's such an awesome, awesome place to live. In terms of like finding your housing or even just like logistics like that, do the companies help you with it? Did you kind of research the places yourself? Like, how'd you pick the place to live? I think people in Singapore have told me that there's like a lot of public housing that's like pretty inexpensive, that a lot of people will end up like finding a roommate who already has a place, or like, how did you kind of go about figuring out where to live and so many of these like logistical decisions?
Yeah, it's complicated sometimes if you don't know the area or how things work. I made some bad decisions, but they are all fixable. Usually, a company that moves into a country gives me accommodation at least for a little time. So I get like from 1 month to 1 week of accommodation, and then in that week I have to find a place to live. And that I pretty much go for something that is in budget that I think is okay, and that is location kind of okay. And I'm not very picky about what I get. Because of that, I had some bad um, housemates that I didn't like that much. And so now that I was in a place and I was not super comfortable, but because I didn't like it, but I knew the city more, I was able to find a different place that was much better for me. So yeah, I think the key is like, don't be very picky in the beginning. Make sure that you don't lock yourself into a big, large contract, and then you can, when you have more time, pick something better.
Yeah. Between the places that you live or when you move to a new country, do you have a lot of bags that you need to pack? Like, how many luggages do you pack, or do you ship them in boxes? Like, it just sounds like a lot of work too to kind of figure it all out.
Yeah, it is work. So I have two, I guess, large bags, like normal size 25-kilogram bags, and a carry-on bag. That's basically all my stuff. Whenever I leave a country, I sell all my stuff and donate whatever I can sell or throw it away. I have these bags, I bring them with me, and wherever I am, if I need to furnish a place, I furnish it again, and then when I leave, I sell everything again, and that's the process.
Yeah, yeah. Does seem like a lot of work, but very rewarding if you do get to live in like all these different places. Yeah, do you have any tips or any kind of words of wisdom for people who are considering moving to a new country?
Well, like one of them is pack light. You have to be not attached to material things, because and just if you are a hoarder, it's going to be really hard for you to do this. So try not to have a lot of things, and be comfortable with having less. If I can, I will not buy a car. I will not get a vehicle. Like my furniture, my place is very minimal, and so one is that pack light. And love becomes complicated if you are moving all the time. So be aware of that. You either find somebody who is willing to go with you, or yourself is willing to be heartbroken all the time. So that's another thing. And yeah, be open-minded, I guess. Like, places are gonna surprise you, and yeah, try to make the best of it. Like there are going to be things that you don't like, but there are going to be a lot of things that you will.
Yeah, those sound like really good advice. I think not being a hoarder is really useful, even if you stay within the same country. Like I know some people who like when they move, they end up getting like a storage unit and then their storage unit is there for like years and like they still have it because they're like, oh, like I might move back to this area and they're just like paying for a continual storage unit. And I'm like, well, that's like a lot of money like over time. That's like thousands of dollars just to like store stuff in a box and like I don't know. Yeah, that I'm a pretty minimalist person myself. So I can only think about how hard it would be to move to another country and bring like a ton of stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I have like had to, because I can't really own a lot of stuff. I have had to, whenever I get to a place, I buy something, and then because I have to get rid of it really quickly, I have to giving away things for very cheap. Like when I was in California, I bought a motorcycle. I had to sell it for very cheap because I needed to get rid of it, and I'm not going to put it in storage because it's going to be more expensive. So you have to be really willing to say goodbye to things that you don't need, even if it costs you a little.
yeah, gosh, for sure. That's I think that's useful for anyone, even if they don't end up moving a lot, even just moving like from one city to another. Like I've moved from like one city in the Bay Area to another city in the Bay Area. And I'm like, I'm so glad I have not that much stuff, or else this would be a lot to move. So that's good. Do you have any advice for people in terms of like, would they feel lonely if they moved? So like, I know some people, they like to stay in the same place their whole lives because they think like, oh, this is where my friends are. Like, this is where I went to school. And like, I don't really move out as much. So like, do you have any advice for people who are thinking like, oh, I kind of want to move there, but I don't really know anyone? Or like, how would I like meet people?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Everywhere I have lived, I have not known a single person. Like I arrive and I know nobody.
That's amazing.
So you have to, yeah. So you have to learn to make friends really quickly, or you're gonna feel very lonely. And here in Australia, it was super weird because I arrived and then there was a coronavirus, so I was not allowed to meet anybody, which made me feel a few months ago kind of lonely. Now things are more open, so I have met people. One thing that I do is go to meetups. So meetup.com, if you don't know it, there are different groups with different activities. Some of them are just social, like go out and drink and meet people. Some of them are things that I'm more interested in, like volleyball, or even software. So as when I go to a place, I find a bunch of meetups and go to a bunch of them because just to meet people. Some of them are not going to be that much fun, but I'm going to make some connections and meet some friends, hopefully. And that's one. And my coworkers, like I have always had good coworkers that we become friends, and we go out, and like I guess you have to be proactive into being social. Like tell people, hey, you want to go grab a drink, and let's do this. Like don't wait for people to invite you to things. Like be proactive and make that social connection yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the best things you can do.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good advice. That's not even just like advice for people moving to a new country, just like people who are adults who are working all the time and not really meeting new friends. Like, I think meetups are great, like making friends in environments you're already going to be in, like at work, like finding hobbies where like you enjoy, like, and that's kind of related to what you're saying about the meetup. Like, I think it's definitely possible to still make friends, but yeah, it's a huge jump to like go somewhere where you don't even know one single person, maybe besides the your hiring manager, because that's where you're going to be working. That's awesome. And like maybe one thing that I'm kind of curious about myself is like, where do you think has some of the best food and like what's been your favorite thing to eat in maybe some of the countries you've lived in? Like was there anything that's really stood out to you as like how the food is really really good, or like this dish, or like this restaurant is like a really good place that I've eaten in? Like because you've probably eaten at a bunch of restaurants around the world now at this point.
Yeah, I have. I think the best food, I would agree with you that Singapore is the best food. And I like it mostly because if you go to one of the hawker centers, which are
Mhm.
little food courts, outdoor food courts in Singapore, they have a lot of options and they are super inexpensive. So you can try, you can after work for lunch, or sorry, for lunch in the middle of the day, you go there and you have a bunch of options that are not going to be super expensive, and they are pretty tasty and oily and super bad for you, which is tastes really good. Uh, about having a single dish that I love, that I think is the best thing. I don't know. I think still tacos in Mexico, like when you go to a place and you get some tacos, and because the way they do tacos in Mexico is different than the way they do it in the US. So you have your taco, and they have a bunch of little containers with a bunch of things that you put in your taco. Like they have nopales, and they have sauces, and they have guacamole, and they have rice, beans, and uh, smashed potato, and a bunch of things, cucumber, everything. So, and all of that you can just put in your taco as much as you want. So you end up like with a taco that is like this high, and then like you try to put it in your mouth, but it's really difficult. And yeah, and it's really tasty. So I think that's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, food in Singapore is so good. I think those food stalls, they're so good. They're just like really small little stalls. It's like in the US, people think like, oh, food truck, that's like a really small place for like a whole restaurant to be in. Like the stalls in Asia are like even smaller and like even more packed. And like one thing I thought was really cool is like you can reserve your seat by just putting a napkin on it, and people like will respect that. It's like I'm putting a little tiny pack of like facial tissue, and it's like, okay,
Tissues, yeah.
that is already a claim table. Let's like go find another one. It's like it's so nice. Like I thought the culture there was like everybody was really respectful and like cares a lot about the community. Like you don't see people just littering everywhere. There's like, there's a lot of order and cleanliness. Like I remember I was walking past a sign and it said like 39 crimes or something this year. It's like keep crime low, and it's like 39 crimes or something in like a whole entire country. Is like that's like one day in like a city here in the Bay Area, unfortunately.
Yeah.
um yeah, and that's like it's so shocking. But yeah, in terms of like tacos, like I have been to Mexico a few times, and I've never been to Mexico City. Did you say the tacos in Mexico City are better, or where you grew up in Cancun area?
I know good places in Cancun. Like I had good tacos in Mexico City, but the ones that I know are in Cancun.
Yeah. Ah, that's so cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. Do you think there's anything else you want to share about international travel or kind of finding a job that enables you to go to different places?
No, yeah, but I guess there's just one thing. Like if you are like me, a software engineer or even if you're not a software engineer, but if you're looking for jobs in different countries, you have to get used to rejection. I have been in more interviews than most people are going to be in their lives, and have been rejected by more companies than you've ever been rejected. That a lot of people will never be rejected. So yeah, be have a tough skin. It's not personal. Keep working and getting better, and yeah, like it's not gonna be easy, but it's doable.
Yeah, and that's because they kind of hold like a higher standard. If they need to jump through a bunch of hoops to get you a visa or something like that, it's going to be way more difficult to get hired.
Yeah, it might be. I think if the company is really big, they might not care that much because they know the process pretty well, but they will still have high standards for whoever they hire. And if it's a small company, that's probably the case. They are gonna take that into account.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's some really good advice. Well, thanks again, Adrian, for stopping by on the show today. And hopefully, people will take away that just keep applying, stay curious. If you want to move to another country, give it a try. You can make friends and literally know nobody in the other country. I didn't realize you didn't know anyone in these other cities. I thought, oh, had you traveled to maybe some of these cities actually, or did you just go there and that was
No,
your
no,
first time?
no. That's another thing that I try to do. I try to go to a place that I have never been. So I try to not go to a place where I want to live.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So never set foot and then just the interview, and the interviews are all remote.
Yeah, usually.
That's awesome. Well, keep traveling. I'm so excited to hear where you go next, and keep in touch. Yeah. Thanks again for
Awesome.
being on the show. We'll signing off as always. Deep breath in together. Deep breath out. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Take care.